Hi, my name is Jonas Carter. I'm 29 years old, and I live in Toronto. I've always considered myself a trustworthy, supportive friend, someone people could rely on, not just emotionally, but in practical ways. That trust became my downfall when I lent a close friend, Derek, a significant sum of money, believing he would honor his word. Derek and I had been friends since university. Charismatic, persuasive, and seemingly reliable, he had a way of making you feel like you were part of an inner circle, someone he trusted with both secrets and responsibilities. Over the years, I had lent him small amounts for emergencies, always with the expectation of repayment. Each time he reassured me, "Jonas, you know I've got you. I'll pay you back. Don't worry." But then, it escalated. Last year, Derek approached me, panicked and desperate, claiming he needed $5,000 to cover a supposed personal emergency. He painted a picture of imminent catastrophe, bills piling up, a family issue, a business opportunity slipping away. His eyes were pleading, his tone urgent, and my natural instinct to help kicked in. Without a second thought, I transferred the money. I trusted him completely. For weeks, I heard nothing. No updates, no thanks, nothing. When I finally reached out, he assured me that repayment was coming next week, and the weeks kept turning into months. Each time I confronted him, he had excuses: job delays, family emergencies, unexpected bills. He was charming, convincing, and infuriatingly evasive. The worst part? I started hearing whispers among mutual friends. They noticed Derek living lavishly, dining out, traveling, buying gadgets while dodging repayment. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust, respect, and accountability. That was when I realized something crucial. He wasn't just irresponsible, he was exploiting friendship for personal gain. I decided it was time to make him confront his actions in public where the truth couldn't be ignored. But to do that, I needed a plan subtle, clever, and foolproof. For weeks, I wrestled with anger, disappointment, and disbelief. How could someone I considered a close friend be so blatantly selfish and manipulative? My emotions were a whirlwind. Part of me wanted to cut him off completely. Part of me hoped he'd finally do the right thing. I started observing Derek carefully. Every time we met, he maintained the same charming facade, laughing, joking, pretending everything was fine. Meanwhile, his spending habits betrayed him. New gadgets, nights out with friends, constant vacations, all while he dodged my messages about the money. The betrayal cut deep. This wasn't a simple financial dispute. It was emotional manipulation wrapped in friendship. Each polite excuse, each lie about repayment, fueled my frustration. I felt powerless, but I also knew that publicly exposing him recklessly could backfire. I needed evidence, patience, and a foolproof method to make him face accountability. I began documenting everything meticulously: messages, bank transfers, screenshots of excuses, and even mutual friends' observations. I wanted a trail so undeniable that denial would be impossible. At the same time, I had to protect my own reputation. This wasn't about humiliating him for fun. It was about holding him responsible in front of everyone who mattered to both of us. Late at night, I mapped out potential scenarios. Could I corner him during a group event? Could I create a setting where he'd feel compelled to explain himself publicly? The strategy had to be subtle, yet inescapable, clever enough that he'd be caught in his own web, and dramatic enough that friends would see the truth with their own eyes. Every plan had its risks. Derek was unpredictable and charming, the kind of person who could twist sympathy in his favor. But one thing was clear: I wasn't letting him walk away anymore. The reckoning had to be public, undeniable, and satisfying. I decided to create a scenario that would bring our mutual friends into the story without making it seem like a setup. I planned a small gathering, a casual weekend dinner with our close group, where everyone would be present. Nothing suspicious, just friends catching up. But behind the scenes, I worked methodically. I prepared screenshots of his lies, transfers, and empty promises, compiling them into a visual timeline that clearly showed the pattern of his manipulation. I also reached out to a couple of friends who had noticed Derek's lavish spending while dodging repayment. They agreed to subtly guide the conversation toward financial responsibility without seeming like co-conspirators. Next, I crafted a few neutral conversation starters, casually bringing up topics like responsibility, loyalty, and accountability. These weren't accusatory. They were natural prompts to draw Derek out. My goal was to make him voluntarily reveal his evasiveness in front of everyone. As the day approached, my anxiety and anticipation grew. I kept reminding myself that this wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about justice, exposure, and reclaiming dignity. If I played it right, Derek would have no choice but to face the truth, while the group witnessed the pattern of his irresponsibility firsthand. On the night of the gathering, I felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. Derek arrived, chatting and laughing as usual, completely unaware that every move, every excuse, every evasive glance he had made in the past months would soon be laid bare for everyone to see. And just like that, the stage was set. The day of the dinner arrived. I arrived early to set the tone casual, friendly, and completely unassuming. The last thing I wanted was to tip Derek off. Our mutual friends started arriving, laughing, catching up, and sharing stories from the week. Derek, as expected, was charismatic and talkative, joking about his latest adventures, seemingly oblivious to any tension. I made sure to keep the conversation flowing naturally, dropping small, subtle comments about financial responsibility, money management, and trust. Nothing accusatory, just casual anecdotes that naturally prompted group reactions. One friend mentioned a recent lending experience, and another chimed in about budgeting challenges. It wasn't long before Derek, wanting to impress the group, jumped in to give his wisdom on managing finances. Here's where I planted the first seed of tension. I mentioned almost offhandedly that someone I'd helped recently had promised repayment but hadn't followed through. Derek laughed nervously and brushed it off, claiming, "Yeah, sometimes these things just happen. Life gets in the way." I noted the hesitation in his eyes, the tiniest flicker of guilt, which I silently celebrated. I knew I had to escalate carefully. I began casually referencing the importance of keeping promises, adding anecdotes about friends who had experienced financial betrayal. Each story subtly mirrored Derek's own behavior. Without calling him out yet, he was feeling the heat, I could tell. Every laugh, every nod from the group increased the pressure. Derek was slightly on edge but still masking it with charm. The group hadn't suspected anything yet, but the groundwork was laid. The trap was set, and all I needed now was the perfect moment to trigger the first reveal. As dinner progressed, I casually pulled out my phone, pretending to check messages. Instead, I opened the first set of compiled screenshots. Derek's empty promises, evasive replies, and repeated requests for extensions. I wasn't ready to confront him fully yet, just enough to seed doubt among the group. I leaned back and shared a story about financial betrayal I had encountered myself, casually showing a screenshot of a conversation with a friend who had avoided repayment. The group leaned in, intrigued. Derek tried to maintain composure, but his body language gave him away, fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, smiling nervously at my casual remarks. I dropped a second hint. I mentioned seeing someone living lavishly despite owing friends money, and made sure the group understood I wasn't speaking hypothetically. Derek tried to laugh it off, deflecting attention, but a few friends began exchanging glances, whispering quietly. Then came the first big reveal. I projected a side-by-side comparison of Derek's bank request for the loan and his recent social media posts flaunting luxury purchases. The room fell silent for a split second. Derek's face paled, and he tried to recover with a joke, but it landed flat. Mutual friends who had noticed the discrepancy started connecting the dots. The first evidence, reveal, had landed perfectly. Derek's charm couldn't mask the truth. The tension was palpable. Everyone was now watching him closely, and I could sense the panic building behind his confident facade. The momentum was shifting. I just needed to maintain control and keep the suspense escalating. After the initial reveal, I let the conversation drift naturally, giving Derek time to stew. I didn't need to push him. His own anxiety was doing half the work. The subtle glances, the nervous laughs, and the fidgeting gave the room a sense that something was off, but no one knew exactly what yet. I then introduced the second evidence reveal. I asked the group, casually, if they remembered that trip Derek had mentioned wanting to fund personally, but supposedly couldn't. I pulled up screenshots of messages where he had explicitly requested the money from me for that exact purpose. Then juxtaposed it with photos he had posted online, showing him on the trip, enjoying activities that should have been impossible without the loan. The reactions were immediate. Friends murmured in disbelief, some whispering to one another. Derek's usual charm faltered entirely. He laughed nervously, tried to joke about the timing being a coincidence, but the visual evidence was undeniable. Every friend who had been skeptical before now saw the pattern. Derek had borrowed a significant sum and used it for personal gain while lying to everyone. I could see the shift. The energy in the room changed whispers, exchanged glances, and barely concealed judgment. Derek tried to regain control, but the dominoes had started falling. The tension was at its peak, and everyone could sense that a bigger confrontation was coming. By this point, the room was tense. Derek's composure was cracking. He was used to evading accountability, charming his way out of minor incidents, and leaning on sympathy when necessary. But now, with multiple layers of evidence displayed and the subtle prompting from mutual friends, his defenses were starting to crumble. I let the conversation drift naturally for a while, pretending to focus on casual topics, but all the while, I had strategically positioned pieces of evidence within easy reach. Friends began asking more pointed questions. Hey Derek, how did you manage to fund that trip last month if you were short on cash? Or, I thought you mentioned being broke. That sounded like a big purchase on social media. Derek stammered, laughed nervously, and attempted to deflect attention. But every deflection backfired. I introduced a subtle twist. A friend who had witnessed Derek boasting about personal purchases while promising repayment casually interjected, "Funny, I thought someone mentioned being broke and borrowing money." The group laughed lightly, but the humor carried a sharp edge, and Derek was the target. The tension escalated further as I finally revealed direct evidence of him avoiding repayment while flaunting his lifestyle. Bank transfers, online purchases, and social media posts were laid out clearly for everyone to see. The group's reaction shifted from subtle disbelief to open astonishment. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others quietly whispered, connecting the dots of previous minor betrayals. Derek's charm was gone. His anxiety was palpable, and it was only a matter of time before the final confrontation would occur. He tried a weak joke about misunderstandings, but everyone saw right through it. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, and I knew the moment for ultimate exposure was approaching. I took a deep breath. The timing was perfect. I addressed Derek directly, keeping my tone calm but firm. Derek, I think it's time to be honest. Let's go over the loan you requested and how it was used. I projected the full timeline of his excuses, promises, and contradictory posts for everyone to see. The room went silent. Friends leaned forward, their eyes fixed on the evidence. Derek's face drained of color as he realized that every lie was now undeniable. The screenshots, bank transfers, and social media evidence aligned perfectly, a comprehensive narrative exposing his manipulation. I didn't need to embellish anything. The facts spoke for themselves. One friend exclaimed, "Wait, so all this time you were lying to Jonas?" Others murmured in agreement, incredulous at Derek's audacity. Derek tried to regain composure, but his voice faltered under the weight of the undeniable proof. I had strategically allowed the confrontation to unfold naturally, giving him no chance to fabricate excuses. Each friend now had a first-hand understanding of his behavior, and the social accountability was immediate. Derek's attempts to charm or minimize the situation failed entirely. By the end of the confrontation, Derek was cornered, completely exposed in front of everyone he had lied to. The room's energy had shifted decisively. The reputation he relied on to manipulate others had crumbled, and justice, long overdue, was finally served. In the days following the confrontation, the aftermath was undeniable. Mutual friends who had been uncertain or neutral suddenly distanced themselves from Derek. The gossip spread organically, no embellishments needed because the truth was undeniable. People were shocked, not just by the amount of money involved, but by the pattern of deceit and manipulation he had displayed over time. I felt a mix of relief and empowerment. This wasn't about humiliation, It was about accountability. Derek had taken advantage of my trust for months, and now he had to face the consequences socially. Some friends thanked me privately, saying they had suspected something was off, but had no proof. Others admitted that seeing it unfold publicly was an important lesson about trust and boundaries. Derek's online persona started to shift as well. Social media posts became more defensive, vague, and desperate. It was fascinating to watch someone accustomed to controlling perceptions suddenly lose grip over their narrative. I stayed above the chaos, observing silently, knowing that the karma had played out exactly as intended. Weeks later, I reflected on the experience. The confrontation had been satisfying, but it also made me evaluate the nature of revenge and justice. Could I have handled it differently? Perhaps. Could I have been more private or less dramatic? Possibly. But the truth was clear. Derek had consistently taken advantage of trust, and passive patience had only emboldened him. The carefully executed exposure had provided closure, accountability, and protection of future friendships. It wasn't just about me getting back at him, it was about setting boundaries, reclaiming dignity, and teaching a harsh but necessary lesson. The friendships that remained after the fallout were stronger, grounded in mutual respect. I realized that true revenge isn't about humiliation for entertainment. It's about empowerment, clarity, and justice. And as for Derek, he had lost credibility, respect, and the freedom to manipulate others. I didn't need to gloat. The evidence, exposure, and social fallout spoke for themselves. Sometimes, trust is tested in the harshest ways. But standing firm, planning carefully, and letting the truth reveal itself can be the most satisfying form of justice imaginable.
Thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this, go watch the one on the left and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel for more tales of triumph over injustice and a saga of ultimate revenge.